What goes into that jar of tomato pasta sauce you toss into your cart? Behind every bite of spaghetti sauce, there is a factory process so precise, so let's dive straight into the complete process to reveal exactly how your favorite tomato pasta sauces, like Classico, Rouse, and Prego, are made. From hand-picked tomatoes to perfectly balanced seasoning, every step in the production is designed to elevate the way we do home-cooked meals. Nothing starts like selecting some fresh, ripe tomatoes. You might picture a relaxed Italian farmer hand-picking tomatoes one by one, but the reality, it's an all-out grind and hard work. Farmers start by working with the right soil, simply because it's a make-or-break factor. Premium pasta sauce tomatoes are grown in well-draining, nutrient-rich soil, often with a focus on mineral balance and organic nutrients. These tomatoes are given VIP treatment. Think 5-star plant food, water management systems, and sun coverage that's just right. Why so much fuss over a tomato? Because only the highest quality fruit can deliver that rich, sweet, tangy flavor without needing extra sugar or preservatives later in the process. But the process doesn't stop there. It's all about selecting the top-tier tomatoes. When it's harvest time, farmers don't just grab any tomato they see. They're looking for a specific profile: deep red color, firmness, the right size, and a slightly sweet flavor. And how do they inspect thousands upon thousands of tomatoes in a single harvest? Well, that's where state-of-the-art technology swoops in. Imagine machines with the precision of a surgeon but the speed of a Formula One car. Sorting equipment, packed with sensors, can instantly check color, shape, and even ripeness. High-speed cameras and scanners ensure only those with flawless skins and perfect texture make it through. No dents, no scars, no wobbly shapes. Only smooth, beautiful tomatoes are worthy of your pasta night. Tomatoes that don't hit these high standards? Rejected. Imagine being a tomato and realizing you're not good enough for the sauce. Talk about a tough audience. So, after all this high-tech quality control, what happens next? After the cream of the crop tomatoes are selected, it's time for their spa day. Now, this isn't just a quick rinse under the tap like you do at home. These tomatoes are whisked through powerful water jets that spray them from every angle. Think of it like a car wash, but for produce, no tomato left unclean. And it's not just about removing visible dirt. This step also rids the tomatoes of any lingering farm, debris, dust, or bacteria. After all, no one wants essence of dirt in their pasta sauce. Here's where things get interesting: the blanching process. If you've never heard of blanching, it sounds fancy, but it's essentially a quick, hot bath followed by a plunge into ice water. Blanching has a scientific purpose. Briefly heating and then cooling the tomatoes loosens the skins, so they slip off easily without damaging the juicy interior. Because, let's be real, who wants a mouthful of tomato skin in their pasta? So how does blanching actually work? The tomatoes are passed through huge industrial blanching machines that heat them to a precise temperature. They're dunked in hot water or steam for just a minute or two. Any longer, and you'd end up with tomato soup. The heat softens the skin, breaking down the cells just enough so it practically slides off. But here's the kicker. The tomatoes are then instantly cooled with cold water, which shocks them, stopping the cooking process. It's the food processing equivalent of waking up to a freezing shower. Effective? Yes. Enjoyable? Well, that's up for debate. Just ask the tomatoes. Why this rapid hot-cold switcheroo? It's all about maintaining texture. Blanching softens the outer skin while preserving the tomato's inner firmness. So when they hit the sauce, they'll break down just right. And here's a neat trick. Some factories use a mild saline solution in the blanching water, which helps preserve the tomato's bright red color. Think of it like a beauty treatment, keeping the tomatoes looking as vibrant as the day they were picked. Blanching on this scale requires top-tier machinery. These industrial blanchers are no joke. They can process thousands of pounds of tomatoes per hour, keeping each one perfectly blanched without overcooking. If tomatoes could talk, they'd probably describe this machine as both a nightmare and a miracle in one. So, we've got squeaky clean, skinless tomatoes ready to go. But what's next? How do these freshly peeled beauties go from whole to sauce? Time to dive into the juiciest part of the process. Crushing and cooking are where those tomatoes transform from juicy red gems into the luscious, savory pasta sauce we all crave. So, how does a factory get it right every single time? First up, crushing the tomatoes. Imagine an industrial-sized blender, but on a scale that would make even the Hulk feel small. In these crushing machines, the tomatoes are gently but efficiently pulverized to release their juices and pulp. But it's a delicate balance. They're crushed just enough to break down the structure without obliterating the texture. The factory needs to hit that sweet spot between chunky and smooth, because nobody wants a sauce that's watery. But also, who's here for pasta with whole tomato chunks that put up a fight? And now, here comes the heat. Once crushed, the tomatoes are sent through a massive, high-tech cooking system. Picture this: enormous stainless steel kettles, or continuous cookers designed to cook thousands of gallons of sauce at a time. And these aren't just any old pots. They're temperature controlled to within a degree or two, cooking at the perfect level to bring out the tomato's natural sweetness while thickening the sauce. It's like crafting the perfect marinara in your kitchen, but on a scale so massive, you'd need a firehouse ladder just to stir it. Maintaining that consistent texture? Not as easy as it sounds. Factories use viscosity sensors to measure thickness, so every batch has that perfect stick-to-your-spaghetti consistency. Too thin? The batch needs more cooking time. Too thick? A little water or juice might be added to balance it out. Some factories even employ inline viscometers, which are essentially texture testing wizards, reading the sauce's thickness in real time. And what about waste? When you're cooking up this much sauce, there's bound to be some byproduct, like tomato skins, seeds, and bits of pulp. But nothing goes to waste here. Those discarded tomato parts, packed with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants, they're often repurposed for animal feed, compost, or even turned into nutrient-rich tomato paste. Now that our sauce is cooking along, bubbling away with all its natural goodness, what comes next? It's time to give it that extra zing, the unique herbs and spices that make each brand stand out. All right, our sauce is thick, smooth, and tomato-tastic. But what makes one jar of sauce taste like Rouse, another like Classico, and yet another like Prego? It's the spices and herbs, the secret blend of seasonings that give each sauce its unique character. This is where things get personal, where culinary artistry meets industrial precision. It's also where the stakes get high, because if the flavor's off, you've just turned a batch of primo sauce into, well, soup. So, how do they nail that perfect taste every time? It starts with a standard flavor profile, a kind of blueprint that dictates exactly how each sauce should taste. Now, you might think it's as easy as throwing in some basil, garlic, and a dash of oregano, but not so fast. These recipes are calibrated down to the gram, and a factory-level batch of pasta sauce might call for spices by the pound. And while the core ingredients are precise, the factory team has a bit of leeway, what they call standard deviation, to make slight adjustments. Why the need for these adjustments? Well, every tomato is a little different. Just as no two tomatoes ripen the same way on the vine, no two batches of sauce come out exactly alike. The batch cookers, who are basically the sauce's DJ, adjust the mix based on real-time taste tests and quality control sheets, keeping things within a very strict flavor range. You could say they're like culinary DJs, fine-tuning the taste so it stays within that sweet or savory spot. Too much oregano? A dash less in the next mix. Not garlicky enough? Bump it up a pinch. It's all about maintaining the sauce's signature taste without getting wild. But what happens if a batch doesn't seem quite right? The whole process grinds to a halt. Imagine simmering so long you start losing the bright red color, or worse, end up with mush. That's when QC steps in and says, nope, start over. Because a sauce that's not only flavorful but visually appealing That's non-negotiable. And here's a fun fact. The taste adjustments are not just about adding more ingredients, but can also mean recalibrating the cooking time or temperature. You can't just throw in a pile of oregano and call it a day. Instead, the cookers make micro adjustments in cooking time or temperature to ensure everything blends harmoniously, maintaining the tomato's integrity without overcooking it into oblivion. So, once the sauce passes all its taste tests, what's next? It's time to bring everything together by thickening and simmering. This step doesn't just make the sauce saucy, it's where flavors go from good to great. First, let's talk about thickening and simmering. The sauce is heated at just the right temperature to concentrate its flavors, creating a smooth, velvety mouthfeel. As the sauce simmers, the water content reduces, giving it that desirable thickness and a more intense tomato flavor. The gentle simmer also encourages chemical reactions between the tomatoes, herbs, and spices, building a complex flavor profile that balances acidity and sweetness. Next, it's time to get the sauce from the kettle to the jars. This isn't a simple ladle and scoop operation. Oh no. The sauce is pumped through a maze of temperature-controlled pipes to maintain a consistent thickness and temperature from kettle to jar. This isn't just for fun. Keeping it warm ensures it flows smoothly into jars without creating air bubbles, which could lead to spoilage. Then comes the high-speed filling process, where jars zoom by on a conveyor belt like they're late for dinner. These high-speed machines fill each jar precisely, with no mess or fuss, preserving every precious ounce of that rich tomatoey goodness. The sauce is poured hot, which helps with sealing freshness. Then, the jars get capped right away, capturing the sauce at its peak quality. Now, what about that headspace in each jar? If you've ever noticed the tiny gap between the top of the sauce and the lid, that's intentional. This headspace is essential for creating a vacuum seal when the sauce cools. But why glass jars? For starters, they're a pasta sauce icon. Who doesn't love that pop when you open a fresh jar? Beyond nostalgia, glass is non-reactive, meaning it doesn't mess with the sauce's flavor. It also offers a strong barrier against air, light, and other contaminants, preserving both the flavor and the bright red color. Plus, when it comes to recycling, glass is the all-star, reusable and sustainable, just like any good Italian nonna would approve of. And let's not forget the cap. Each cap is selected and tested for a tight, vacuum seal to keep the sauce safe from spoilage. Once capped, jars go through a quick heat treatment that kills any lingering bacteria, ensuring your sauce is shelf-stable for months or even years. Think of it as the sauce's final spa day, all to make sure it's in perfect shape when it finally reaches your kitchen. Once the jars are sealed, they are examined in a series of quality control checks to make sure it's in top shape. First, they're visually inspected for proper fill level, ensuring each jar has the right amount of sauce without overflow. Next, the seal is tested by machines that gently press on the lid to confirm it's airtight. And finally, each jar is labeled, coded, and scanned to log its batch number, which allows manufacturers to trace any issues back to a specific production run. So, sealed, checked, and certified. What's next for our beloved jars? They're heading for packaging, where they'll be bundled up and sent off to grocery stores. But how exactly does a factory get thousands of jars onto shelves across the country? Jars are grouped, boxed, and shrink-wrapped by machines that ensure they're securely bundled without risk of breaking. But the outer packaging isn't just for protection. It's designed to capture your attention on a busy grocery shelf. Think about it. With so many options in the sauce aisle, a brand's packaging and label can make or break that split-second decision. Which jar looks like it came straight from an Italian kitchen? Enter the label. The trust factor. Each brand takes a unique approach to connect with its audience. Rouse goes classic and clean, with an Italian heritage vibe that evokes the warmth of a family-owned restaurant. Their label says, "We're authentic, premium, and we stick to our roots." Prego, meanwhile, focuses on a modern, approachable feel. With vibrant red hues and bold letters, It promises an all-American sauce experience that's rich and comforting, like something you'd make at home, but in half the time. Classico takes the old world approach a step further. Their jars have rustic labels that seem to be hand-stamped, with little flourishes that scream authentic. The label evokes European charm and simplicity, and it's no coincidence that it feels like a piece of history you can trust. As part of the Heinz empire, Classico has access to quality and resources, while keeping the look and feel of a family recipe passed down for generations. And there you have it. The journey from fresh tomatoes to your kitchen table is no small feat. Every step from selecting the ripest tomatoes to sealing the last jar is all about making sure you get the best possible pasta sauce. And each brand, whether it's Rouse, Prego, or Classico, puts its own unique twist on that process. But with Classico, you're getting a taste from a brand that's part of the same family as Heinz. The masterminds behind another kitchen classic, ketchup. Coincidence? We think not. Speaking of ketchup, what's the main difference between tomato sauce and ketchup? You might be surprised. It's not just the consistency. Ketchup has its own secrets, its own unique production methods, and a flavor profile that's almost an art form. Ever wonder how Heinz gets that perfect tangy kick? Well, you'll have to stay tuned for our next video to find out. Catch you then for a saucy adventure in the world of ketchup.